In one of the most outlandish projects ever conducted by a major car builder, the Renault Avantime attempted to combine the sporting prowess of a coupe with the large body practicality of a people carrier, creating the world's first and only coupe MPV. However, for many, the Renault Avantime appeared to be a concept car that somehow made it to whole-scale mass production, and with it combining the attributes of coupes and MPVs but the appeal of neither, this machine proved to be a monumental failure, though despite its appearance at face value, the car is in fact a technical tour de force with a plethora of clever design features that are quintessentially French. Renault's path towards the creation of the Avantime can be traced back to the mid-1980s, a period when the company began to make its mark as one of Europe's most forward-thinking car manufacturers, with the introduction of the Renault Espace in 1984 being nothing short of revolutionary, as at a time when the idea of a multi-purpose vehicle or MPV was still largely unexplored in Europe, the Espace broke new ground, offering families a spacious, flexible and highly practical mode of transport that reshaped public expectations of what a family car should be. Its unconventional one-box design, upright seating, large windows and flat floor made it unlike anything on the market, this car having been designed and built by Matra, a French engineering company with a background in aerospace and motorsport, with the Espace being technically innovative and commercially successful, and thus Matra's experience in lightweight construction and advanced composite materials perfectly complemented Renault's ambitions, making the Espace not only a sales triumph, but also a technical showcase for both companies. As the Espace flourished throughout the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, Renault recognized that this success had opened doors to further opportunities, with the popularity of the MPV format highlighting a growing market for vehicles that offered both space and comfort, but Renault also saw the potential to move further upmarket. Meanwhile, within the company's broader strategy, several complex changes needed to be addressed, with Renault grappling with factory overcapacity and searching for ways to balance production across its facilities, while at the same time, its executive offerings, particularly the Safran which had succeeded the Renault 25, were perceived as too conservative to compete effectively with their German and Japanese rivals. By the early 1990s, Renault made a pivotal strategic decision that would set the stage for the Avantime, with this move being driven in part by the desire to maintain tighter control over manufacturing volumes and processes, but also necessitated a redesign of the Espace's platforms to suit Renault's conventional steel-based production methods. As a consequence, Matra faced the imminent loss of a highly lucrative production contract, and in an effort to maintain the partnership and safeguard Matra's future, Renault offered the firm an alternative project, with this new challenge being to develop an entirely different type of vehicle, one that retained the spacious qualities that had made the Espace so appealing, but would also cater to a more exclusive and sophisticated clientele. It was within this context that the concept of the Avantime was born, and Matra, though initially hesitant to relinquish its profitable Espace assembly, eventually accepted Renault's proposal and began to embrace the creative freedom the new project offered. At the helm of Matra's automotive decision, Philippe Guidon envisioned a car that would effectively blend the grand touring characteristics of a coupe with the roominess and comfort of an MPV, with the target audience being empty nest couples who had once owned an Espace, but now no longer needed its full seating capacity, yet still appreciated its elevated driving position, open visibility, and sense of light and space. Meanwhile, Renault's own design identity was undergoing a transformation under the leadership of Patrick Lecquemont, who had joined the company in 1987, with Lecquemont's influence bringing a bold new aesthetic to Renault's vehicles, favouring distinctive, sometimes polarising shapes that broke with traditional automotive norms. His team's earlier work on concept cars such as the 1995 Initiale demonstrated Renault's willingness to pursue avant-garde ideas, and this bold direction was carried further with the unveiling of the Velsatis concept in 1998, which showcased Renault's ambition to offer luxury vehicles that embodied French creativity in design, fashion and architecture, rather than emulating the more sober and restrained styles of German manufacturers. The Avantime's design development formally commenced in the spring of 1998 within Renault's Design Industriel department, with Matra being deeply involved from the beginning, as it was planned that Matra would manufacture the car once its development was completed. The design process advanced swiftly under the creative guidance of Thierry Matteau, who produced the vehicle's first exterior sketches, while the interior was styled by Stéphane Jardin, who undertook the project as his debut assignment, with the visual connection to the Velsatis concept being immediately evident, particularly in the dramatic verticality of the rear window and the strong sculptural rear profile, while the vehicle's overall silhouette fused the raised stance and classy openness of an MPV with the clean lines and assertive proportions of a grand touring coupe. In February 1999, Renault introduced the Avantime concept to the international press at an exclusive event held near the Louvre in Paris, while a month later, the public saw the car for the first time at the Geneva Motor Show, where it was labelled a coupe Espace to reflect its unique fusion of MPV and coupe design philosophies, with Renault seeking to establish an entirely new category of luxury vehicle unconfined by existing market segments. Technically, the Avantime was underpinned by an adapted version of the Espace platform, with the understructure consisting of warm galvanized steel, while the upper body was constructed from lightweight aluminium to lower the center of gravity, while the composite panels were bonded to the frame to complete the bodywork. The most radical feature of the Avantime's design was its complete absence of B-pillars, which enabled a fully open, pillarless side profile when the doors and windows were open, while in order to achieve this, the design required an ingenious engineering solution for the doors, which were 1.4 meters in length and weighed 55 kilograms each, and were mounted on complex double kinematic parallelogram hinges that allowed them to open with a minimal outward swing, making access easier in confined spaces. The cabin was a further expression of the Avantime's singularity, providing 4 individual seats that were arranged in a luxurious configuration, each equipped with integrated seatbelts, with the rear seats being slightly elevated to provide theatre-style visibility for rear passengers, enhancing their sense of space and comfort. The cabin was flooded with light, thanks to the panoramic glass roof and the large side windows, with Renault's Grand Air mode allowing all the windows and the sunroof to open simultaneously, creating a cabriolet-style experience at the touch of a button. High-quality materials such as bridge of weir leather were used exclusively, while the architecture of the interior created an ambience that was both futuristic and sophisticated, while the dashboard design, carried over in part from the Espace, positioned the instrument cluster centrally to emphasize Renault's commitment to innovation and nonconformity. To support the Avantime's luxury positioning, Renault offered a selection of engines that were intended to provide strong performance while reinforcing the car's grand touring credentials, with the flagship engine being a 3-litre V6 sourced from PSA, delivering 207 horsepower, paired with either a 6-speed manual or 5-speed automatic transmission, while a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine offered a slightly more economical option, and a 2.2-litre turbo diesel was made available for left-hand drive markets. However, as the vehicle moved close to production, several significant obstacles emerged, with the pillarless structure posing considerable engineering challenges in meeting increasingly stringent safety standards, while the complex door mechanisms proved difficult to perfect, with these technical delays repeatedly postponing the Avantime's market launch. Simultaneously, Renault's management accelerated the development of the production Velsatis, which was eventually released at almost the same time as the Avantime in 2001, with the close launch dates of these two radically different vehicles, straining Renault's resources and creating internal competition. At one stage, Renault even explored the possibility of introducing the Avantime to the American market through its partnership with Nissan, potentially rebadging it as an Infiniti, though a detailed analysis revealed that adapting the Avantime for the United States would cost in excess of $80 million due to the need for significant design modifications to meet American safety and emissions standards. The Avantime officially entered production in 2001, with manufacturing entrusted to Matra at its specialized Romorantin facility in central France, and critical reception upon the Avantime's release was decidedly mixed, with many in the motoring press applauding Renault's audacious approach and admired the Avantime's avant-garde styling, innovative engineering, and bold attempt to create an entirely new category of vehicle. Car Magazine praised its interior for its architectural flair and luxurious appointments, while design commentators noted the vehicle's striking visual impact and the cohesive interplay between its exterior and interior aesthetics. Yet not all feedback was positive, with reviewers at Autocar highlighting several shortcomings, remarking that while the design was undeniably bold, the Avantime's handling characteristics did not successfully marry the comfortable ride of an MPV with the dynamic agility expected of a coupe, while the dashboard layout, although visually interesting, was criticized for its compromised ergonomics, and the rear seating space was noted to be surprisingly limited given the vehicle's imposing external proportion. Sales forecasts at launch reflected a measure of optimism on the part of Renault and Matra, who hoped that the Avantime's distinctiveness would attract a loyal customer base of affluent buyers seeking an alternative to more conventional luxury vehicles, with initial production targets aiming for approximately 20,000 units per year. However, these ambitions quickly proved unrealistic, and by the end of 2001, only 2,067 Avantimes had rolled off the Romorantin production line, far below the anticipated volumes, with European registrations for the model totaling a mere 779 units in its first year, signalling a significant shortfall from Renault's projections. The Avantime's commercial struggles were further exacerbated by the concurrent launch of the Renault Velsatis, another unconventional high-end model introduced around the same time, as while the Velsatis offered a similarly distinctive design language, it retained a more traditional four-door configuration, making it more accessible to conservative buyers who might have found the Avantime's format too radical. Compounding matters was the fact that internal reports suggested that Renault's own sales organisation placed greater emphasis on promoting the Velsatis, offering more attractive incentives to dealerships, which inevitably drew attention away from the Avantime. In 2002, Renault made a concerted effort to broaden the appeal of the Avantime by expanding its engine range, recognizing that its limited powertrain options may have been restricting its commercial potential, and to attract a wider customer base, particularly those favoring more economical running costs and better fuel efficiency, Renault introduced a 2.2-litre DCI turbocharged diesel engine. This engine, producing 150 horsepower, offered strong low-end torque and improved fuel economy compared to the petrol variants, though this diesel option was offered exclusively in left-hand drive markets, meaning that important right-hand drive markets such as the United Kingdom remained restricted to petrol-powered versions. This expansion of the range did little to alter the vehicle's fortunes, and despite the new engine and increased marketing efforts, sales figures remained disappointing, with 2002 seeing a total of 5,037 Avantimes be sold across Europe, with production for that year reaching 5,097 vehicles. The Avantime's underwhelming market performance placed immense financial strain on Matra, as having invested heavily in the unique tooling, engineering and manufacturing processes required for the Avantime's complex construction, Matra found itself unable to recoup its development costs, with the one-off nature of the Avantime's design meaning that production was both slow and expensive, exacerbating the financial losses. By December 2002, after months of mounting losses and no realistic prospect of recovery, Matra made the difficult decision to withdraw from automotive manufacturing altogether, and Renault, faced with the choice of either absorbing Avantime production into its own facilities or discontinuing the model, opted for the latter, and without Matra's expertise and specialist production capabilities, the Avantime was effectively unviable. The final Avantime left the production line at Matra's Romorantin-Londonay factory on April 18, 2003, and by the end of its final full production year, output had declined sharply, with just 1,286 vehicles built during 2003, with European sales for that year amounting to 2,226 units, reflecting the ongoing struggle to find buyers for the unconventional model. Cumulatively, between its launch in 2001 and the cessation of production in 2003, approximately 8,450 Avantimes were manufactured, of which around 8,083 units were sold in Europe, while a small number remained in stock after production ceased, leading to a further 48 vehicles being registered during 2004 as dealers sold off the remaining inventory. Within this limited production run, only 445 examples were produced in right-hand drive configuration for the UK market, and a further 207 vehicles were exported to Japan, where they were also configured for right-hand drive operation. During its short production life, Renault and Matra had tentatively planned for a mid-cycle update to refresh the model's appeal, with this facelifted version, internally designated as Project D67, being scheduled for release in 2004 or 2005, with the proposed revisions including aesthetic updates such as a lowered boot lip to improve practicality, addressing some of the criticisms levelled at the original design. However, with Matra's decision to withdraw from automobile manufacturing in 2003, this marked not only the end of the Avantime's production, but also the D67, and with the closure of Matra's facility, production of the Espace was transferred entirely to Renault's own factories, with Renault taking this opportunity to redesign the Espace, abandoning Matra's expertise in composite materials and space frame construction in favour of a more conventional, fully steel-bodied platform for the Espace 4, which would prove easier and more cost-effective to manufacture at scale. Despite its commercial failure and short production life, the Avantime has, in the years following its discontinuation, steadily earned recognition as one of the most daring and unconventional design statements in the history of modern automotive design, with its combination of grand touring comfort, strikingly avant-garde aesthetics and technical ingenuity continuing to attract an ever-growing number of admirers. Unlike many cars that vanish into obscurity after failing to meet sales expectations, the Avantime has instead become something of a cult classic, with its rarity of fewer than 9,000 units having only increased its desirability among collectors and enthusiasts, while particularly prized are the V6 models equipped with manual transmissions, which represent the most performance-orientated and engaging versions of the car, and which are now increasingly difficult to find in well-preserved condition. In retrospect, it is widely acknowledged that the Avantime was perhaps launched at the wrong moment in automotive history, its concept simply being too advanced for the market at the time, and with it seeking to create a new segment, merging elements of a coupe, MPV and Grand Tourer into a single cohesive package. This was perhaps too much of a step for a market that was suffering an identity crisis between staid conservatism and the forward-thinking cutting edge. Years later, this formula would find widespread acceptance in vehicles such as BMW's X6, which successfully combined coupe styling with SUV proportions to create a commercial barnstormer, thus meaning that the Avantime was not merely a precursor to this trend, but rather a singular design exercise whose closest comparisons remain purely theoretical, with its bold execution and refusal to conform to existing market conventions, ensuring that no true successor has ever emerged, leaving it as a unique artifact of early 21st century automotive ambition.